Welcome to this video tutorial with Virtual Racing School in the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup on iRacing. This week we visit Zolder, where I'll be looking at a lap from Rens Broekman, who has driven in default morning weather to match the official series. I'll play the lap in full for you first before then going into further analysis. Okay, so that was a 1 minute 29.977. So on the VRS website then, from the list of data packs, we'll scroll down and choose the Porsche iRacing Cup as driven by Rens Broekman, and we're going to choose week 10. Zolder loads the session details where you can download the lap files, a replay, and of course the setup. So we're just going to click on Learn Track, which will load up the driving analyzer. It will play the lap through. I've already reduced it to half speed and muted it for the purpose of this tutorial. And yeah, at the top here we can see the steering angle input trace, the speed trace, and at the bottom we've got the brake and throttle input traces, and finally we have some live driving inputs as well. So obviously to start things off, we'll go on sector 1, which is the run down towards the braking zone for turn 1 from the start finish straight. So we'll play this through, and there is a braking marker that we've just passed there on the left, this 100 meter marker. That's pretty much going to be your braking reference for turn 1. Quite a fast first corner, but because it's such a wide arc that you need to take through, you need to brake nice and early. So we'll just show you the chase view as well. So braking quite hard initially, just after that 100 marker, which we should be able to see just there, and shortly before this sponsoring on the pit wall, we're just going to bleed off the brakes and turn in, and progressively bleed off more and more, progressively turn in tighter and tighter, which we can see in the steering trace as well as the brake trace there as well. And spotting our apex here, which is a very short apex, and we want to pick up the throttle just before we apex. With it being quite a fast corner, you have to be patient with the throttle, eventually reaching full throttle just before the exit curve there, and allowing the car to run out onto that exit curb where you have this extra green extension as well. So bringing the car over to the left hand side for turn 2, and we'll go to sector 3 for that. And Rens is braking very gently into here, and the trajectory that Rens is on at this moment takes him wider and wider after he started braking. So he starts braking a little way away from the edge of the track, but because he's aiming towards the outside, he's continuing to get closer to the edge, and in that way he's taking full advantage of the full track available, and progressively bleeding off the brakes more and more as the corner tightens up, and spotting his apex on the inside but not fully releasing the brake, so holding the brake just about 5-10% all the way into the apex, and picking up the throttle just before the apex again, quite aggressively initially, and then that familiar modulation and patience before reaching full throttle at the exit. Now I'll just show you these curbs here on the exit. You don't want to run wide onto those. They're very, very aggressive, intentionally so, that you are encouraged away from them, but still using all of the track available and getting as close to them as possible. Now this then leads immediately into turn 3, which is easily flat out. The only thing that you need to worry about really is taking the shortest possible distance through here, which involves a nice wide arc with an apex just as this curb ends, and then you can open the car up to the exits, which then gives you a nice wide approach into turn 4, which is another high speed corner. So shortly after that curb on the outside ends, you want to be on the brakes again, and you could use this access road on the left hand side as your turn in reference. So just after there, Rens turns in, and again as he turns in, he gradually bleeds off the brakes simultaneously, and tightens the steering up and reduces the brake pressure more and more into the apex. Now again, Rens is on the throttle really quite early here, and that's because the corner opens up quite nicely, and it's very important to get your exit. So you want to be nice and wide on the entry, aim for a late apex, but then that allows you to get on the throttle nice and early, and then you just have to hesitate and modulate that throttle through the apex. And again, most of the corners here at Zolder have these nasty curbs which act as a deterrent on the apex, so you want to get as close to them as possible but don't touch them, and in order to do that, Rens is kind of modulating the throttle, so he's not quite fully committed yet to full throttle, which he does so now. And on the exit you can see that he does get a little bit of oversteer, which we can see in the steering trace as well as the steering wheel here, and he also drops a wheel into the gravel. Now you can get away with that as long as you have the car fairly straight, which Rens does by this point, so all is okay. The short run now towards the first of many chicanes on this lap. The braking zone for this one is going to be just as you pass under the bridge overhead there. We'll go to sector 5 for this, and braking quite hard into here initially just after that bridge, keeping the car in a straight line before turning in just before the wall on the outside, the red and white painted wall ends. And you have to be very precise through this first chicane, in fact through all of the chicanes, but especially this one. You want to avoid this white curb on the inside there, but then this curb you can use. So the second apex white curb on the inside you can use, but I highly advise that you do your best to avoid the second one, because if you clip that with your rear wheel, then that can really unstabilize the car and put you into a bit of trouble. So climbing up the hill then, using all of the track obviously, keeping the car settled, allowing it away from the edge briefly before then bringing it back towards the inside where you have this curb on the left hand side. We'll just go to sector 6 for this, and this again is also going to be your braking reference. So just as this curb ends, or just before there, that's when you want to be on the brakes. Now you'll notice here that Rens is on the brakes really quite gently initially, and then as the car straightens up, you should be able to then brake a little bit harder. Obviously you can't afford to brake so hard when the car's loaded up mid-corner. So turning in quite late just before this curb on the outside ends, and then again you need to be quite precise here, but you can get away with using these nasty white curbs on the inside, so you can use a decent chunk of that first one. The car does bounce quite nastily there, you'll see. I just want to show you that again actually. So a bit of a nasty bounce there, but you can get away with quite a lot in this car. You can use a decent amount of curb. Eventually if you cut too much you will get penalised, so just be aware of that. You can use roughly up to about the middle of the curb. So the same through the second one, and then you want to exit there quite tight. Be patient with the throttle because positioning is very, very important, especially into this next right-hander, and this is all classed as turn 7. Still in second gear at this point. We'll go to sector 7, where Rens has a brief lift out of the throttle before then aiming for the inside curbs again, and that keeps him on a nice tight line where he's able to feed in the throttle gradually, using all of the track, allowing the car out to the edge of the circuit using this curb on the outside, and then turning in just before the curb ends, has another lift out of the throttle, but again doesn't need to touch the brakes at all through here. So you're looking for your apex at this point. You've got some of these nasty curbs again on the inside. You don't want to touch them. Get as close to them as possible. Get your car positioning right, and then if you do all of that, you should be able to commit to full throttle and almost maintain full throttle. And if you do have the need to feather out of the throttle briefly at this point, don't worry. It shouldn't cost you too much momentum, but the goal is to position your car prior to that nicely so that you can really commit for the exit. And open the car up towards the left-hander now, keeping the car over to the left towards the hairpin, where there isn't really much of a braking reference here. You can use the tyre wall on the right hand side, but Rens is braking a good amount before there, braking quite hard, probably the hardest braking zone on the whole circuit. So threshold braking, trying to modulate around 60 or 70% right on the threshold of lockup, and keeping the car in a straight line all the way down into second gear. No need to use first gear. The car has enough torque in second gear to get away with it. And quite a late turn in, and it's important really that you don't have too much speed in the center of the corner, so you really want the car to rotate nicely. So you can really see again, Rens does not coast. He's holding that brake all the way into the apex before then picking up the throttle fairly carefully on the exit until the car is nice and straight. So that's quite important. Get the car as straight as possible, as early as possible, and then you should be able to really commit to full throttle and use this curb on the exit if you need to. So this is actually turn 9 now, easily flat out S or chicane. It's not really even a corner, it just leads to the short straight before the final chicane, which is turn 10. And again, you've got a braking reference that you could use here, which is the 100 marker, but Rens is braking a little while before there, so reaching 60 or 70%, threshold braking in a straight line, down into third gear, and second gear in fact, and turning in quite late. That's quite important. So the exit of this chicane is really critical. So you really want to make sure that you don't turn in too early, because ideally you want to run over these curbs in a way that won't unsettle the car. So you'll just see here that the car reacts quite nastily there, has a little bounce. That's not ideal, and so you just need to be quite careful that you don't apex too soon and wash out too wide for the second half of the chicane. So you want to keep the car reasonably tight, and but you can get quite greedy with the curbs through the right-hander, where Rens has another lift, keeps the pedals fairly quiet on that curb, and picks up a little bit of oversteer on the exit, and as a result doesn't need to use all of the track on the exit, but that's really just a result of how well the car reacts through the final half of the chicane there. You can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with world champions from the likes of Core and SimSport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.